Don't be selfish, your sister needs a break. What do you even do with your life? Those words didn't just hurt. They echoed across the silent room of 30 guests at my parents' 40th wedding anniversary. My father, William, wasn't just uninviting me from the surprise family trip to Hawaii. He was publicly assigning me my permanent role, the unpaid nanny for my sister, Jessica. While she squealed with delight about the vacation, I stood there clutching a dirty dessert plate, finally realizing the brutal truth. To them, I wasn't a daughter. I was just the help. But as the humiliation burned my cheeks, a cold resolve settled in my chest. They thought I was trapped. They had no idea I was about to vanish and never look back. To understand why I eventually detonated my relationship with my family, you first have to understand the stage upon which the Miller family drama played out. We lived in a pristine white colonial in the Boston suburbs, the kind of house with a lawn trimmed to HOA perfection screaming, "We made it." My father, William, was a retired bank manager, and my mother, Linda, treated her role as the matriarch like she was running a Fortune 500 company. Image was everything, and in the curated gallery of the Miller family, my younger sister Jessica was the masterpiece, while I was merely the nail holding up the frame. Jessica was the golden child. She was married to Michael, a corporate attorney whose firm's name she managed to drop into every conversation within 5 minutes. They had the two perfect grandchildren, the designer wardrobe, and a brand new Lexus SUV. Whenever they visited, my mother's command was immediate. "Sarah, move your Honda to the street. Michael needs the driveway." I never argued. I just moved my 10-year-old Civic so the neighbors would see the luxury car first. That's the thing about being the invisible sibling. You stop noticing the small indignities because they happen so often they just feel like gravity. Family gatherings weren't celebrations for me. They were unpaid shifts. For Thanksgiving, I would arrive at 6 a.m. to baste the turkey and polish the silver. Jessica would breeze in at noon wearing a pristine cashmere sweater, kiss everyone hello, and sit down to be served. Last Christmas, Jessica gifted me an apron with "World's Best Aunt" written in glitter. She smiled like it was a thoughtful gesture. It wasn't. It was a uniform. I wore it while I scrubbed dishes, while I wrangled her toddlers, and while she sipped wine and complained about how exhausting it was to have a nanny only 3 days a week. But they didn't know I had changed. 3 years ago, my fiancé left me, telling me I was just there, like furniture or wallpaper. That devastation led me to a pawn shop where I bought a used Canon camera. I started photographing people. Society looked right through janitors, street vendors, the lonely elderly. I called the series Invisible Women. I poured my soul into that lens, because in my family, I was invisible too. I was simply Sarah who helps out. I was useful, but I wasn't significant. Or so they thought. The night of my parents' 40th wedding anniversary was supposed to be a celebration of love. Instead, it became the night I realized I didn't actually have a family. I had arrived at the house at 7 a.m. to prep the catering, arrange the white roses exactly as my mother Linda demanded, and polish the silver until my fingers ached. By the time the 30 guests arrived, I had changed into a simple black dress, fading into the background like I was trained to do. Then came the grand entrance. Jessica swept in wearing a designer red wrap dress, with Michael trailing behind her in a charcoal suit. They looked like a magazine cover. Michael didn't even say hello. He just handed me their toddler, Oliver, and said, "Hey, can you take him? We need to mingle." He passed his son to me like I was the coat check girl. I spent the next 2 hours in the kitchen wiping faces and keeping the kids quiet so they wouldn't ruin the adult ambiance, while laughter drifted in from the living room. At 9 p.m., my father William stood up and tapped his champagne glass. The room hushed. He wrapped an arm around my mother and beamed. "To celebrate 40 wonderful years," he announced, his voice dripping with rehearsed charm, "Linda and I have a surprise. Next week, we are taking the whole family to the Four Seasons in Maui." The room erupted in applause. Jessica actually squealed, clapping her hands. My heart leaped. The whole family. For the first time in years, I felt a spark of inclusion. I stepped out of the kitchen shadow, smiling. "That sounds incredible, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the applause. "What time is our flight?" The silence that followed was instant and suffocating. My father's smile didn't waver, but his eyes went cold. He looked at me like I had spoken in a foreign language. "Wendy, I mean Sarah," he corrected himself, though the slip was telling. "You don't need to know the flight time. You're not going." 30 pairs of eyes swiveled toward me. I felt the blood drain from my face. I I don't understand." "Someone has to stay behind to watch the grandchildren," my mother interjected smoothly, as if explaining something to a slow child. "Jessica and Michael need a real vacation. They work so hard. You'll stay at their house with the kids." "But I work too," I whispered, though my voice trembled. "Oh, Sarah, please." My mother scoffed loud enough for the back row to hear. "You don't have anything important going on. Family comes first. Don't be selfish." I stood there holding a dirty dessert plate while guests awkwardly looked at their shoes. One woman whispered to her husband, "Poor thing, she must be used to it." That was the moment something inside me didn't just break, it shattered. They didn't just want a babysitter, they wanted to remind me of my place. And they had done it in front of everyone I knew. The party eventually wound down, as all performances must. My parents went to bed exhausted from accepting congratulations for their 40 years of marital perfection. Jessica and Michael drove off in their Lexus, leaving me behind to fold the tablecloths and load the dishwasher. I was alone in the kitchen, surrounded by the remnants of a celebration I was explicitly excluded from. I realized I needed to send a file to a client, a deadline I had pushed back to organize this very party. My laptop was at my apartment, so I opened my mother's MacBook on the kitchen counter. It was already awake, open to her Gmail. I should have closed it. I should have respected her privacy. But then I saw my name in the subject line of a thread with Jessica re Hawaii Logistics / Sarah situation. My finger hovered over the trackpad. I knew it would hurt, but I had to know the extent of the betrayal. I clicked. The thread started a week ago. My mother wrote, "Don't worry about childcare. We'll keep Sarah here. She doesn't have anything important to do anyway. Derek was right. It's like having free help. She should be grateful we give her a sense of purpose." And Jessica's reply, the sister I had tutored, defended, and practically raised. She wrote, "Totally agree, Mom. She'll probably feel useful for once. It's kind of sad, honestly, looking at her life, but at least it works out for us. LOL. Free help, kind of sad. LOL. I read those words until they blurred. They didn't see me as a daughter or a sister, they saw me as a utility, an appliance that could be unplugged and stored away until needed. I didn't cry. Tears imply sadness, and I was past sadness. I was in the cold, hard territory of clarity. I took screenshots of everything and emailed them to myself. Then I cleared the browser history, shut the laptop, and walked out the door. I drove to my apartment at 1 a.m. I didn't sleep. Instead, I called the one person in my family who had been exiled long ago, Aunt Susan. "Susan," I said when she answered on the second ring, my voice surprisingly steady. "Is that offer to help at the cafe still open?" "Sarah?" Her voice was thick with sleep, but instantly alert. "Honey, that offer is open forever." "What happened?" "I'm done," I said. "I'm leaving. Tonight." "Then pack your bags," she said. "The ocean is waiting for you." By 4 a.m., my Honda Civic was loaded with 3 suitcases, my camera gear, and my laptop. I left my apartment key under the landlord's door. The only thing I left behind was the world's best aunt apron. It sat in the trash can right where it belonged. I was done being the help. It was time to be the artist. 2 days before the Dixon Miller Grand Hawaiian excursion, I drove to my parents' house one last time. The living room was a staging ground for their vacation piles of sundresses, snorkels, and Jessica's itinerary color-coded and laminated. My mother, Linda, didn't even look up from her packing when I walked in. Finally, she sighed. Jessica sent over the kids' medication schedule. Oliver has an ear infection, so you'll need to do drops every 4 hours. Don't mess it up. I stood in the doorway, my hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of holding a grenade I was about to pull the pin on. I'm not taking the schedule, Mom. I'm not watching the kids. The silence that followed was absolute. My father lowered his newspaper. Jessica, who was scrolling on her phone on the sofa, looked up with genuine confusion. What do you mean we leave on Tuesday? I mean I won't be available, I said, my voice steadying. I have a work opportunity, a real one. I'm leaving for California tomorrow morning. California, my father scoffed. Doing what, filing taxes for some hippie commune? No, I said, and this was the moment I had waited 3 years for. I have a solo exhibition opening. A gallery owner named Daniel Evans saw my portfolio, the one you didn't know existed. He's offering me a show. You can't be serious, Jessica snapped, standing up. Her face twisted into a look of pure entitlement. You're going to bail on us for a hobby Mom tell her she can't go. This is incredibly selfish, Sarah. My mother hissed, her eyes narrowing. Family comes first. We planned this trip around you. No, I corrected her. You planned this trip on top of me. If you walk out that door, my father threatened, his voice rising, don't expect to be welcomed back. I looked at them, really looked at them for the first time without the filter of obligation. I understand, I said, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to apologize. I turned and walked out. Behind me the shouting started, but it sounded muffled, like I was underwater and finally kicking toward the surface. I got into my Honda Civic, which was packed to the roof with my entire life. As I merged onto the highway, heading west toward Aunt Susan, and a life that was finally mine, my phone began to buzz. Jessica. Mom. Dad. Voicemail after voicemail. I didn't listen to a single one. I simply rolled down the window, turned up the radio, and let the wind tear the good daughter away from me mile by glorious mile. I was no longer their free help. I was free. While I was breathing in the salt air of the Pacific Coast Highway, watching the ocean shimmer like crushed diamonds, the Miller family vacation in Hawaii was imploding with the precision of a controlled demolition. I wasn't there to witness it, of course, but the frantic texts painted a vivid picture of paradise lost. Without their free help, the reality of parenting hit Jessica and Michael like a tidal wave. Apparently, Oliver threw a tantrum in the hotel lobby because nobody remembered to pack his specific sensory blanket, my job. Sophie's ear infection flared up, and nobody knew the dosage for her medication, also my job. My mother, Linda, spent the week not relaxing by the pool, but refereeing arguments between Jessica and Michael, who were discovering that a vacation isn't a vacation when you actually have to watch your own children. My phone buzzed incessantly. Sarah, where is Oliver's rash cream? Sarah, the resort nanny, is fully booked. Who is supposed to watch them tonight? Sarah, Mom is driving me crazy. Pick up your phone. For the first time in my life, I didn't reply. I didn't solve it. I let the chaos sit where it belonged, in their laps. Meanwhile, my reality had shifted from grayscale to technicolor. Aunt Susan's home in Carmel by the Sea was a sanctuary of pottery wheels and ocean breezes. I spent my morning serving pour-over coffee at her cafe, the ceramic cup, chatting with locals who didn't know me as the disappointment, but just as Sarah. On my third day, I walked into the Coastal Light Gallery to meet Daniel Evans. He wasn't the scary, pretentious art dealer I had feared. He was a kind man, with silver hair and eyes that really saw you. He walked me through the pristine white space, stopping in front of a digital display of my work. You have a rare gift, Sarah, Daniel told me, looking at a photo I'd taken of a tired waitress smoking in an alleyway. You capture the dignity in being overlooked. We're going to call the exhibition Invisible Women. He slid a contract across his mahogany desk. A solo show, 15 pieces, a 60-40 split on sales. As I signed my name Sarah Miller Artist, my hand didn't shake. I thought about my family miserable in their 5-star resort, realizing too late that the most valuable person in their lives was the one they had treated like a ghost. I wasn't a ghost anymore. I was finally coming into focus. 6 weeks later, I stood in the center of the Coastal Light Gallery, a glass of champagne in my hand, feeling like I was in a dream. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh lilies. A string quartet played softly in the corner. But the real music was the red dot next to my centerpiece photograph, a portrait of a weary commuter. It had just sold for $3,000 to Mrs. Thompson, the most formidable art collector in Monterey. "You have a rare eye, Sarah," Mrs. Thompson was telling me, her pearls gleaming under the track lighting. "You see the things the rest of us are too busy to notice." Then the gallery door banged open. The spell broke. My family didn't walk in, they invaded. My parents, Jessica and Michael, marched into the room still sunburned and peeling from Hawaii. They looked like tourists who had taken a wrong turn into a cathedral. Jessica, wearing a floral sundress that was aggressively out of season, spotted me and rushed over, ignoring the 50 guests, the music, and the art. "Sarah! Thank God!" she exclaimed, her voice shrill enough to stop the cello player mid-note. "We've been calling you for weeks. I'm pregnant again, number 3, and Michael is swamped. You need to pack. We're driving back to Boston tomorrow." She didn't ask. She demanded. She didn't say congratulations. She said, "I need." The room went deadly silent. I felt 50 pairs of eyes on us. "Jessica," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I'm in the middle of my opening night." "Oh, this..." She waved a hand dismissively at my framed soul on the walls. "It's a cute hobby, Sarah, but let's be real. Family comes first. Mom is losing her mind without you. She's not coming back." Aunt Susan stepped forward, her voice like steel. "Stay out of this, Susan," Michael snapped, stepping up with his lawyer-in-court face. "This is a private family matter." "Actually," a cool voice cut through the tension. Mrs. Thompson stepped between me and my brother-in-law. "I just paid $3,000 for this young woman's work. I don't pay that kind of money for a cute hobby, and I certainly don't pay it to someone you seem to think is your servant." "Who are you?" Michael sneered, his arrogance blinding him. "The person who knows your name is mud in this town," Mrs. Thompson replied, taking a sip of her champagne. My mother, sensing the social tide turning, tried to pivot. "It's just a misunderstanding. We love Sarah. We just want her home." "Do you?" I asked. I pulled my phone from my clutch. "Because I have the emails you sent before the party, Mom." I held the screen up. "Shall I read the part where you called me free help? Or the part where Jessica said my life was sad, but at least useful to you?" "Sarah, don't." My father warned, his face turning purple. "She should be grateful we give her something to do," I quoted aloud, my voice ringing clear across the gallery. "That's what you wrote. Well, guess what? I found something to do, and it pays a lot better than being your doormat." The collective gasp from the crowd was better than any applause. My mother's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Jessica burst into tears, performative, panicked tears. For the first time in 32 years, the shame wasn't mine to carry. It was theirs. And it was heavy. That night, the Millers walked out into the cold fog of regret, while I sold $14,000 worth of art and finally stepped into the light. This isn't just a story about revenge. It's a lesson in self-worth. Your value is inherent, not measured by how useful you are to others. Remember, setting boundaries with toxic family isn't an act of betrayal, it's an act of survival. Have you ever had to choose between your family and your own sanity? I want to hear your story in the comments below. If Sarah's journey inspired you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about reclaiming your power. Thank you for watching, and remember, you deserve to be seen.